This is the City Council Finance Subcommittee meeting of January 30th. Myself, Councilor Hagan, and Councilor Cobb present. Did you just see the minutes from the
Yes, I did. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
I'll second. Any further discussion?
None.
Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. I can take notes. I know it's
We'll
present.
combine them more.
Mayor's communication.
Nothing beyond what's already on the agenda.
Thank you. Public speak. Anyone want to speak on anything that's not on the agenda? Okay, I'm going to, if it's okay with you, Councilor Cobb, I'm going to switch the order of the agenda and do the continuing business since we have guests here. Okay. And that's the interdepartmental transfer of $1,380 to fund a labor dispute resolution for the DPW. Get that out.
That's it, I'm on.
ER. CZERWIEC.
That's right. Okay.
We took this up at our last meeting, and we decided to invite the union, or the union representatives down because there was some discussion by the administration that while they agreed to it, they had some concerns and tried to explain it might be somewhat of a issue of that they weren't 100% in favor of, even though they signed it. And I felt it only fair that before we made a decision whether to approve it, we at least get the union's comments on why you felt it was done in the first place and why you think it was a fair agreement. Okay. Maybe you don't think it was a fair agreement.
Well, the original issue came out when they decided to take the state retirement board and the uniform allowance wouldn't count towards retirement. Mm-hmm. So we had been getting paid by the hour, including overtime, with the original 15 cents an hour. So at overtime it's 22 cents an hour, obviously. When they decided to pay us just the flat rate of the $6 per week or 15 cents an hour, we lost the overtime, which amounted to somewhere between probably $30 to $45 a year per employee. Mm-hmm. So that's what that's basically what we agreed, okay. And they found in our favor and basically told us settle. So this past first this last year we got paid to $312. So the 60 on top, we're up to, I think the current contract is at $325 for uniform allowance. And we're going up to $350 next year. So basically the $60 just covers what we lost over the last 2 years. In a nutshell.
You want to respond to any of that, Mike?
Well, no one decided to do it. It was a change in state law, and I thought the union was being fairly childish about it, and I still do.
Sorry, Mr.
I will say that Mike was right. They had been in the base, and then they were calculating overtime on it, but the contract specified a cap, which equaled out to the $6 a week.
Right, the past practice was that you paid overtime.
I'm not disagreeing.
And that was the issue.
Actually, I don't have that much to say on this. I see it as a very small dollar amount, looks like we possibly corrected for the future. And I see this as a correction for, regardless of people's opinion on something in the past. If we didn't have a solution on the table, I might have a different opinion, but I don't see any reason why we can't go forward.
This is a one-time payment. I mean, it's not gonna.
Unless they grieve it again.
Essentially, right.
And they grieve lots of different things.
I know. I've been in the collective bargaining process. Anyone else have any comments? Anything else you want to say? Or before we...
No, I don't think so.
I feel
I think once this is settled, it should be settled. So.
And I'll start out. I'll make the motion to recommend approval of this request as presented tonight to the full city council.
I'll second it. Any further discussion?
Yeah, just, no. I was going to ask him a question, but we already had a question.
I'll also vote in favor. I think, again, it was a deal that was signed off by both parties. I know maybe at least one side might have signed off as a result of not wanting to further incur higher legal expenses, but I mean, a deal to me is kind of a deal. So I'll vote 2-0 to approve the funding. I believe this will have to go to a public hearing, so we'll set a public hearing for this at the next city council meeting, which is, I believe, February 6th, so the 20th, right, would be the...
So you may want to plan on attending that just ways.
February 20th, this will come up at the full city council. I'll set the hearing at the next one, and then 2 weeks later, it will be the 20th. Okay?
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Anything else?
Thank you. Spell your last name.
McCarthy. MCC.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go back to the top of the new business, interdepartmental transfers, $15,000 for anticipated shortfall in labor council and negotiating expenses.
You have a copy of the support letter from the personnel director.
Yep.
Happy to try to answer any questions you might have. I think she's explained it fairly clearly. Maybe you might not recognize the term Metatrol. And so, as you are aware, the city has had a pretty significant number of injured on duty, line of duty injuries in the public safety departments, and so Metatrol is a company that specializes in helping us deal with those line of duty injury issues that happen in either police or fire. And so we brought them in because it's, as you know, it's a pretty significant cost, and the better we handle it, the faster we're going to be able to come to resolution, whether the employee is able to come back to work or whether, as you know, we've had to retire a couple of employees. But the Metatrol services are what allows us to be able to do that efficiently.
Are these expenses backed up by a contractual agreement?
There is an agreement with Metatrol.
Okay.
The agreement, and the Metatrol agreement has a hard number per month. The agreement with the negotiator is an hourly agreement, not a fixed number of hours.
Okay.
But as you know, we're in mediation with the police department, and we're in arbitration with the fire department.
And the Metatrol is month to month. You don't have a contract.
So it's $1,000 a month. So the $6,000 is $1,000 a month for the. Is this just for the fire department? You know, it mentions the ongoing fire department, but would the police be involved here at all with these expenses?
No, I don't think so. I think the police expenses are all settled. The police portion of that is all settled. I think that we just have fire enrolled now.
Okay.
It was when we started with both of them enrolled, and I think we've gotten to resolution on all of the outstanding issues. Whether they're completed or not is a question, but all the outstanding issues in police, I think, are settling out. But I think we still have a few outstanding issues in the fire department.
Councilor Cobb, any additional questions?
No. I've seen these over the years as a except for the on-call one, but I tried to do that because the last time we've already talked.
Yeah, we've talked about bringing that specialty firm in to assist with that.
So these are some of the kind of housekeeping things. The only question I would have is, and you can't answer anyways, I was going to say, do you think we'll see more negotiator or more professional service expenses in this fiscal year? We can't say that either.
We're expecting this to cover what we project for the time that's going to be required in the remaining year. So my best estimate is that this will be sufficient.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Do you want to make a motion? I can make a motion for that. I'll make a motion that we recommend to the full city council the following appropriation amount requested: $15,000 from general reserve in the amount of $9,000 for professional services, professional services, and $6,000 for negotiated professional services.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. I'll also set a public hearing on this one for February 20th at the next city council meeting. Item 2 under interdepartmental transfers, $10,000 to replace a failed air conditioner compressor at the municipal building.
So this was an unexpected failure. There were 2 air conditioning compressors in the building, and one of them failed. The estimate to repair it is $99.75 plus the cost of refrigerant. So we expect it'll probably be about $11,000 for the total. Normally we would, especially at this time of year, we try to figure out how do we put that within the expenses, but we've had several issues in building operations this year, and that line item is currently overdrawn by about $10,600. So it doesn't look like we have room to be able to fit this within the operating budget. The problem is we need both compressors operating in order to sufficiently cool the building to occupy it. So we need to get this project completed before the warm weather in June.
Is it a lengthy project, or is it?
You have to place the order for the compressor. This is an older building. These compressors aren't necessarily on the shelf, so we have to get it. I think that if I recall the conversation, probably 4 or 5 weeks from when we order to when we get the project done.
So we couldn't wait till the next till July.
Can't wait. We won't
be putting it in. So
we won't be able to occupy the building if we with one air conditioning compressor once the normal temperatures hit 80 degrees.
I saw a sign on the door during the cold snap, something about a problem with the...
Sure.
Is that a different problem, or...?
Yeah, it's a different issue. The same air handling system. There is, on your right-hand side, as you walk into the building, a large air intake economizer. It's a vent with shutters that open and close. And in theory, when it's very cold, they're closed, and when it's very warm or we need cool air, they open. And the mechanism for that had failed. That's one of the costs that we've already incurred.
You said that you've already incurred.
In order to make the building.
And I don't take it the windows in this building open. So.
None of the windows open, and the baseboard heat that you see is simply perimeter heat. It's intended to keep the building from freezing, not to heat the building. So the air handlers are both hot and cold air, depending upon the need. Now this building, as you're probably aware, was built in the late 50s, and so the air handling system in the building is vintage. We looked at upgrading it to modern during an energy evaluation project that we conducted with Siemens, and it can be modernized, and we can put VAV boxes and water coils in the 20 locations that we currently have air boxes. The cost of that is somewhere in excess of $300,000, and it has about a 45-year payback. So it wasn't economically feasible to expend that kind of money as an energy project. For the sake of comfort, if we were in really, good financial shape and had a lot of money that we didn't necessarily have to spend on more vital things, maybe doing a major HVAC job in the building would make some sense, but...
Is it uneven air? Like one side the sun's coming in?
Yeah, the real problem here is that you've got a north side that gets no sun and a south side that gets a lot of sun, and so the solar gain on the south side usually means that those rooms are too warm, or if those rooms are comfortable, the north side without solar gain is too cool. Today is an interesting change for winter because the system is really geared towards maximum heating, and a warm 40 or 50 degree day when the building's set up to heat, the building tends to overheat. And today was one of those days when the building was essentially overheating. And in the summer we have sort of the opposite. Generally speaking, the air conditioning system has to work extremely hard to overcome the solar gain on the south side, whereas many times the folks on the north side are too cold. And so it's the nature of the old air handling system that's in the building, and if there were, again, some available funds for that purpose, new shades in the building may help with the solar gain. It's actually part of the capital plan energy improvements group, but it's not the kind of a project that most energy programs recognize as being eligible for their program. So we couldn't go to Bay State Gas and say, we want to put blinds in and we think that that'll save on heating, or go to Western Mass and say we want to put blinds in, we think it'll save electricity on cooling. They don't recognize that as a legitimate conservation measure. And we did some preliminary estimates. It's about $70,000 or so to redo the window treatment in the building. Maybe it'll happen someday, maybe it can happen in pieces, but right now that's not on the agenda.
Also, I'll give you a little tidbit based on experience. We've had experience with tinting windows where, because of the glass size, the tinting worked so well that it actually caused uneven expansion and contraction. The glass actually cracked. Or old glass like this.
All the windows in the building I've tinted except for my office. This corner on the first floor is the only windows in the building that aren't tinted.
My work depends on the size of the glass.
Yeah, I don't have an issue in my office, but
So if you go into it, just ask them, see what they say. I have actually no debate on this at all. I saw this as pretty straightforward to me.
Yeah, and that account being overdrawn is really what
It was
prompted
you to transfer the money.
It was actually, to me, it was obvious, with the note here that the refrigerant not included, that they're going to reclaim what they can, and the rest he's going to find another source of money for.
Just to bring up to date, council notes, we're on the $10,000 for the air conditioning.
So I'll make the motion to recommend approval of this to the full city council.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. I'll also set a public hearing for February 20th for this item. Final item, supplemental appropriation of $100,000. This is from free cash to the police education incentive, sick leave buyback, and uniform expense. I know you said the chief was unable to attend tonight, so I guess it's up
So
to
you have the chief's letter, and it actually, his total request, I believe, was about $108,126. So we reviewed the numbers and whittled it down a little bit to bring it to an even $100,000. I think that all of the items are self-explanatory, but I'd be happy to go down the three items that are broken out for you. So the police educational incentive, as you may recall, and Melissa can fill you in a little, we are moving to make sure that all payroll expenses are associated with the year in which the expense was incurred. Which means that payroll for FY14 or FY13, all the costs for FY13 pay should be in that budget. And so a part of this is getting this department to that level. There'll be a third incentive payment that wasn't included in the original budget appropriation. That'll be made out of out of the 13 budget for 13 earnings, which normally would have been made out of the 14 budget.
These are the one-time.
Is this the last of the departments? I know we did Public Works and
Yep, this is the last one.
So
fire
this is-
department's done, or?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, so this is the last of the one-time, so you could consider that a one-time.
Okay. That's the 30,
The 65.
And that's because.
So looking at the appropriation, it's the first line on the
the
appropriation.
65 on police.
65.
Right. I was looking on the back where it was talking about the, well, that's the third, I see what you're saying,
I
yeah.
mean, what
That's
this
fine,
is
that would be the last item.
Right.
normally, most of the employees who have an incentive now get paid it weekly. So therefore, once the payroll time ends, then they get paid it as they go. There are some of the holders on to the lump sum, and so it's calculated on what they worked backwards, and so they don't calculate this and pay this until 2 weeks after the year's out.
Okay.
And so that's what this is about. These are the people who choose, and they can choose it either way, but lots of people now, money in hand kind of thing, they'll take it now, thank you.
Right.
But, some people like to have the big lump sum for their incentive, but they are technically earning it all year.
But they do get a lump sum at the end.
Yeah, there's a few officers that choose to get it that way.
Is there, just a little off the thing on the incentive, is there, given that some officers have left and we're hiring younger officers with less experience, but I don't know what their education is.
Well,
Is it going to...
the incentive is still
gonna
the incentive.
Right, the incentive's the incentive. That's why I didn't know if there would be any adjustment to it, or minimal probably, if any. I don't know if they have higher degrees or lesser degrees.
Yeah, it sort of depends. Some are lower. Some have masters. None of the new guys have had masters, I don't think, but they've had bachelors. One now that was fired. Yeah, and it's a variable, and there's also an amount in the original annual appropriation, an estimate based on overtime, because the incentive is also paid on overtime. So this was what was the so-called twin bill.
What time is it? 6.
You're welcome to attend, Dan.
That's okay.
So this was what was originally cast as the Quinn bill. And as you know, 2 years ago, the state stopped funding half of the Quinn bill. Our contractual obligation to the department is to continue to pay the incentive.
Well, I guess you can't talk about current negotiation.
Yeah. Well, there's been no effort to remove the education incentive from either of the departments that get it. So police and fire both get education incentives.
Okay, so that's the...
I got it.
Yeah, we're actually on the last item. We've kind of...
The only question...
We're on the police supplemental.
This doesn't affect my vote tonight, it's just more of a piece of information. When I noticed the Kevlar vest, is there any way we can reuse that? I mean, you don't have to answer that if you don't know, or just directly to someone.
If when an employee leaves, if his vest is still within its service life, it can be reused. But the employees leaving and the employees coming in aren't the same size. So yes, they can be reused. They have a service life.
Kevlar vest is...
They're custom. They come in, and when they come in and fit you. And they do have a shelf life. I think when I was working, it used to be like 5 years. I want to say that. Depending, now some go faster because, like, if you're in patrol, where you're in, it's the moisture.
And again, if it's stained because of body moisture, it's not going to be given to another officer. So this is really a kind of a personal piece of equipment.
Like the uniform.
Is this
This is the 100,000.
I mean, what are you talking about? Kevlar is pretty fairly expensive.
We're talking now about...
Cyclone, or do we just hang one shelf and
One is
Dispose of them.
we dispose of them?
There's three different things in
Any kind of body waste on it is considered.
That and in the industry, there's a concern that this armor doesn't get out amongst characters that you may not want to provide police level armor to. Trying to say that in a nice way. And so there is a need to make sure that first of all, that the new officer gets adequate protection and gets the right gear and it fits him and it's appropriate for his continued use. And also the disposal side of it, the departments are careful about how the disposal is undertaken. And I think, as the chief's letter said, most of the time, we can get grant funds for that. The cycle doesn't work for the new hire.
That's what I was going to ask you. I read that where you couldn't get the second.
It's just the timing.
Just the time.
And that's a fairly small part of the
Right,
overall.
it wasn't
The next item, sick leave buyback, that's a line that's driven by the turnover in personnel. There are 2 individuals identified that are going to be leaving or have left the department. They get, per contract, an opportunity to buy back an accumulation of leave that they were due and could have used or could have been benefited by it, on their retirement. And so that covers that, and I think the chief explained it fairly well. And the balance we put into uniform, and it's really very self-explanatory about where that money's going, and actually the money we're requesting is less, overall, is less than the chief asked for, because we think we should be able to move the balances from other parts of the budget, of their existing budget.
Is that sick leave instead of a percentage, or is it, or a number of days, is it the whole? Or you're confusing me? I know each contract's probably different.
I don't recall off the top of my head. I know part of it's based on use, how much sick leave you take in a year, and if you don't take as much as whatever's in the contract, you get a benefit from it.
Do you have any questions, Dan?
No, I looked at all these, I didn't see anything. We are going to talk about the 13th.
They came in, the union came in, and we approved it. 2-0. But certainly you can make your, they were here
Discuss
first.
it with you guys, yeah.
One other item, just so you know, you're getting the beginning of the capital supplemental appropriations at your next meeting, and supplemental appropriations require advertising. I would suggest that this $100,000 supplemental appropriation could wait to be added to a public hearing agenda where there are other supplemental appropriations to save the advertising cost. It's not critical. Well, it's not critical that we get it
At the next.
in February. As long as it happens sometime by the end of March, we shouldn't have any issues in the budget.
Any further discussion on, did you make a motion? Or you didn't make a
No, I
motion?
did not. I didn't make a motion.
Any further discussion with Dan? Anything else?
Guess I'll do it then. Okay, I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the supplemental appropriation of $100,000 from free cash to the presented accounts.
Second.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I believe that's our last agenda item. If you want, before we adjourn, if you'd like to talk about...
Because I was thinking I'd be opposed to it, but my curiosity, if I understood it correctly, this was already, administration says that it was paid for through a supplemental contract or something, shall we say. There was another method of paying for this, and they're asking for it again. In other words, a double dipping? No? What am I misunderstanding?
I don't know. The issue is that the law changed. They could no longer have retirement taken out of retirement. Their earnings for uniforms could no longer qualify as retirement earnings. We've continued to pay them what we were contractually obligated to.
Okay.
Seems like the difference, listening to the unions, was there was, in their old contract, they also got it on their overtime. Is that correct or not, Melissa?
Past practice.
Past practice was that they got it on their overtime.
But that was, their contract stipulated $6 a week.
Right.
Or $312 a year.
But they were, by past practice, they were getting an extra $48, so this was
Being
a...
overpaid.
Right.
So that might be the part that
So that was
That's
their...
what I'm saying.
So that was the deal that was struck to give them the one-time payment, because they're no longer getting that, which was the past practice. I mean, now whether that was right or was wrong to begin with is I just felt, again, and I can only give, and I explained it before, is I felt this was a deal between two parties, both sides sided it, and
Well, yeah, but to be honest, what bothers me about this is that they knew full well that for $1,300, that the administration wasn't going to fight it because it would cost them that much just to talk to a lawyer.
well,
I mean, obviously, that's how I look at it.
well, I think you're being subjective looking at it. I mean, that's your subjective.
Really? Well, okay. If legally, if the administrator wanted to fight it, it would cost a lot of money.
Right, but the way I understand the collective bargaining process, it's money that the administration has to pay and money the union has to pay. Both sides pay to go to collective bargaining, to arbitration or correct, unless the city system is different than the state system, the union pays half and the administration pays half. So it would behoove both sides to settle, I would think.
The only split costs are for the administrator. You pay your own legal costs.
Right. For the, like, if you have an arbitrator.
But didn't you say, Mike?
You just split the cost of the arbitrator.
Right, that's what I said, not the...
But you're not going to, you said you didn't want to fight it because the legal costs it wasn't worth it.
Anyway, that was
I got to think about it.
And certainly you can be more than willing to...
Well, I missed it, and right now I'm leaning to abstaining because I just don't feel, it doesn't sound right. But unfortunately, I had the wrong meeting time in my head for another meeting, and I missed it. So,
And the union was invited to the public hearing will be the 20th, and they were invited, so certainly you can ask them at the time if they have any additional questions. Anything else, gentlemen?
Before we adjourn, since I'm now spending some time at the senior center, Mike, one of the questions I asked them was if they had a Wi-Fi connection there. And so what I'm saying is if something comes to you, you decide to provide a supplemental for Wi-Fi, it has my support also.
That appropriation is not in the budget.
Okay. And I know she said she might be applying for a grant.
She did
Try to
apply
get
for
that
it.
in. Okay. I'll call her up and ask her what a grant is, see if I can have some input into that. Okay.
We also had, while we're discussing, I didn't have time to put it on the agenda because I kind of came up after, but there was and I know you responded in email, and I went down and talked to the clerk on the planning board, city council joint hearings, advertising costs.
yeah.
And, I'm going to, talk to the planner, but to me, if it's always been paid for by the planning board, to me, it should be paid for by the planning board unless, I'm not saying it's unreasonable to ask us to pay for half of it, but not during halfway through the budget season,
Well, my question
Because
is,
I don't want to go over our budget to pay for advertising.
why are we being forced to go over budget? Why can't the planning department ask for a supplemental from the mayor if that's the case?
I agree with you. I
You
just
know
want
what
to...
we're talking about.
No, but it doesn't really matter at this point.
No.
This was an issue where in joint planning board, city council, when they have a joint hearing, the planning board, under the old planner, always paid for the advertising. We just set a hearing that's coming up, and the planner came to the city clerk wanting half from the city council. And again, if past practice was they always paid them, then to me, they should pay them unless they want to discuss it until the next budget cycle, because I don't want to go over our advertising budget, because we only figure advertising for the council items, so that's kind of what it is.
Trust me, I won't interfere with your conversations with the city planner.
Gotcha.
I didn't know the past practice. That's new information.
That's what
So
Barbara said.
So that Stewart did it down. He paid.
He paid.
And they don't have a budget line for.
Well, I guess, how Stewart did it, I don't know.
I suspect that they feel the same way you do, that the budget's tight, that they've had lots of hearings, and they were seeing if there was a way they wouldn't impact their
Yeah,
budget.
they're trying to see if there's a way we can help them. Of course, we're out of budget money.
So I guess your response will drive the planner's decision moving forward.
Gotcha, exactly. Anything else before we adjourn?
Well, they didn't make a promo.
Just after the meeting, so
Well, I missed 2/3 of it.
I have just two quick announcements here. I've received calls concerning a CPA appointment, so if you know of anybody who's interested in a CPA position.
Boy, you received a call.
Barbara. that there's a vacant CPA position.
Is that Bob Erickson's position?
Yes.
What was that, a council appointment? Which one was
I
that?
don't think so.
Yeah,
It's a city council. We have, I forget how many do we have? Plus the finance committee chairs.
Yeah. And then there was,
That's why she's talking to us,
Yeah.
because it's a city council.
the other item was Nancy Folensby sent a letter around, everybody got it, concerning the committee she's forming.
Yeah, Dan and I were on it.
Okay,
We were there
Dan,
last night.
The two Dans.
The Dans were there.
The two Dan counselors.
It's a long meeting, but I thought it was interesting.
I want to thank you guys for stepping in.
We're back in 7:15.
That was the meeting that I knew was at 6:30, and for some reason I had 6:30 in my head again tonight, so I'm getting old. No, let me change that statement. I am old.
I'll make a motion to adjourn unless there's other discussion.
I was just gonna make a motion to make me younger. Second.
All in favor, aye.
I feel like
Thank you,
an
everyone.
asshole.